All right, let's take you now to our top story of the evening, and that is, of course, the appointment of Justice Raymond Zondo as the country's next Chief Justice. For more on this, we're joined by legal journalist Karyn Maughan, Judge Dennis Davis, also on the line. Karyn, let me perhaps begin with you. There seems to be a lot of surprise at the appointment of Judge Zondo. Why do you think that is?
I think that there was a very strong feeling that now was the time for a female Chief Justice to take the helm of the judiciary. But I also think that President Ramaphosa has chosen to make a decision to really reverse what happened with Deputy Chief Justice Karyn Maughan all those years ago, where he was clearly overlooked because of his statements about not serving any particular party in his work as a judge. And I think that given that DCJ Raymond Zondo, or Chief Justice Zondo as we will now call him, only has 2.5 years in office, I think it would have been perceived as a potential snub if he had not been given the chance to lead the judiciary. And I also think, Kathy, given that this appointment comes off the back of him releasing that far-reaching report on Bosasa, which essentially painted a very damning picture of the ANC as essentially complicit in a corrupt criminal enterprise run by Bosasa, it could have been perceived as a very adverse comment against someone who has devoted 3 or 4 years of his judicial career to uncovering corruption that in many instances directly implicates the ANC. And there may have been a very strong feeling that in doing that, he'd effectively, like Moseneke, put himself out of the running. So I think what Ramaphosa has done in making this decision is making a statement about, Zondo as someone who's been outspoken about the independence of the judiciary, about speaking out against attacks, that he will have political support in terms of the work that he's done.
Judge Davis, let me bring you in here, and I know that you may well be limited in what you can say about this, given the fact that, you are in the legal fraternity, but perhaps just your reaction to the announcement of this appointment.
Well, I'm delighted that he was appointed. I've known Raymond Zondo, now Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, for a very, very long time, since the time he was a young and incredibly talented labor lawyer in the 1980s. And I've probably worked with him longer, he and I might have worked together longer than almost any other two judges, because I was on the Labour Appeal Court for about, for at least for 12 years we worked together on the Labour Appeal Court. And it was an extraordinarily good time, and I gained incredible respect for him. And so I'm delighted that he's been appointed. But let me make this point, just to reinforce what Karyn has said. I do think that if he had not been appointed, the question would have been, really, as they say in Afrikaans, stunk for dunk. Here was a man who has courageously exerted the independence of the judiciary in a very difficult commission of inquiry, has basically asserted the fact that judges are going to judge without fear or favor, and then to say, well, sorry, we're going to hold that against you, even though you're the Deputy Chief Justice, would have been a staggering, I think, slight, and it would have been wrong. And I do think the fact that that the President has made this appointment is a assertion, one, of his seriousness that he's taken the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, and two, it is true that it has asserted the level of continuity that the Deputy Chief Justice becomes the next Chief Justice. And of course, what is significant is the indication to nominate the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Mandisa Maya, to be the next Deputy Chief Justice. I think that's also good for her, and I'll tell you why I say so. Because the complete mess with which the JSC got into last time, even though she's not culpable at all in relation to that, of course not, but it isn't down to anybody's credit, and the idea that effectively she will now have over 2 years to serve as the Deputy Chief Justice will assert her own independence and her own undoubted ability, will make it, if she does become the Chief Justice thereafter, so much more an appointment that will be welcomed by all than would have been a divisive case now. Divisive because of the way that the hearings of the JSC were conducted.
You talk about ability here, Judge Davis, and the question of credentials has been a big one. We saw it come out even during those JSE interviews. And there's really divided opinion over the credentials of these 4 candidates. Do you think that by appointing Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo as the next Chief Justice, that those who felt his credentials were in question will then use that against him? I mean, was there a wrong appointment in as far as these 4 candidates were concerned?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by credentials. If the credentials mean the following, technical ability, that is technical legal ability, a vision of the transformational nature of the Constitution, a level of independence, an experience as a judge, judgments that have been written by that judge so we can test him or her, then, it didn't seem to me that any of the 4 people would have not been qualified. In fact, the tragedy of the JSE hearing could well have been, if they'd done their job properly, is to say we think all 4 people are qualified, you must make your choice. Mm-hmm. So if you talk about credentials, the only credentials we can keep talking about is that some people who are implicated by the Zondo Commission, either directly or indirectly, are upset by that. That's hardly a credential for Chief Justice. In fact, it is a credential for Chief Justice that he, in fact, did his report without fair favour.
Karyn, let me come back to you again just on this issue, because we have seen how much of the opinion of the JSE, especially in making the recommendation of Justice, JSE President Justice Mandisa Maya, the suggestion that she is the most qualified person to take up the post, and it certainly has created some doubt over the other candidates. And the question here is that whether or not that is fair.
I would agree with Judge Davis on this. Remember that there was a presidential panel that was asked to evaluate and shortlist the most suitable candidates for this position. And they, consisted of a judge, Judge Pillay, former public protector Thuli Madonsela and others, and they evaluated all the candidates and came up with the 4 names. President Ramaphosa, choosing those people as all of them potential candidates for the Chief Justice, and really just exercising his role under the Constitution to consult with the JSE about their suitability. So the JSE's role was never to recommend a single candidate, and there has been a lot of legal debate about this, but essentially, they and I almost in a way arguably attempted to force the president's hand on this unfairly for all the candidates, because as Judge Davis says, they were simply about interviewing these candidates and evaluating whether any of them were against the recommendations of the panel not suitable. But Chief Justice Zondo has a rich and prodigious history of legal judgments to his name. He has penned incredibly far-reaching rulings. He has overseen the state capture inquiry for the last 3 years, and he has acted as the Deputy Chief Justice, with Chief Justice Mogoeng for a number of years. And, as was the case with Moseneke, it could have been seen as a very distinct snub of the work that he's done in the state capture inquiry and his status as the deputy if he wasn't appointed. Mandisa Maya has now been put forward by the president as a nominee for the Deputy Chief Justice position. The term at the Constitutional Court is 12 years. Zondo has 2.5 years left. And President Maya will now be in a position where she can get, return to that court that she served at many, many years ago, get into, assist very strongly with the administration of the court, which is something that she's particularly strong at, which has been raised as a potential issue with Zondo in terms of his administrative abilities in past interviews that have happened. And she has the ability now, to potentially be appointed in 2.5 years and to serve in that court for 10 years. So, this is an elegant solution, I think, by the president. It's very strategic, which essentially says we're going to recognize the heroism, the bravery, and the courage of Zondo, who's come under such vehement attack from all quarters for the work that he did at the State Capture Commission. We're not going to send a message that if you step up to the plate as a judge, it's going to be career inhibiting for you. But at the same time, we're going to acknowledge the need for real transformation in terms of female leadership of the judiciary. And we're going to put Mandisa Maya in a position where in 2.5 years' time, it is very, very likely that she will be appointed as Chief Justice of the country.
Judge Davis, if we can turn our attention then to the state of the judiciary, what lies ahead for this incoming leadership?
I think a huge amount. Remember, we have not had a Chief Justice effectively for almost 6 months. It is true that Justice Zondo was the acting Chief Justice, but my goodness, look at all the work he had to do on the Commission inquiry. So it's terrific that we've now got, as it were, permanent, I'm quit and retired, but that my colleagues have a permanent leader. I think there's a lot of work to be done. The judiciary has come continuously under attack. We know that. Egregious insults have been hurled, particularly at my black colleagues, absolutely outrageous. And Justice Zondo responded, I think, perfectly properly to that. That obviously the level of confidence is required of the judiciary in the country. Now we've got a leader who I think enjoys the widespread confidence of the entire country. The judiciary is under-resourced. There have been significant controversies about appointments to the highest courts. Hopefully those will now, as it will, be dissipated and we have firm leadership. And I think you could have seen, by the way, that the last hearings which Justice Zondo conducted at the JIC, just a different tenor of that. So there are challenges, resource challenges, appointment challenges, legitimacy challenges, and to have a Chief Justice who I think does enjoy the confidence of the overwhelming number of South Africans, and I base that on general kind of media, if you look, social and other, it seems to me that he can rise to those challenges. And it is very, very important because we're going through turbulent political times and we need a Chief Justice who can, as it were, steer the judicial ship through those stormy waters and, as it were, add to the legitimacy of the institution, which is absolutely central to our constitutional democracy.
Judge Dennis Davis, legal journalist Karyn Maughan, let me thank you both for your time tonight.